In this second video of aerodynamics, we will go for air in motion, that is air currents. Air currents are movement of the air with respect to the earth. If the air is rising from the earth, it is called a vertical or thermal current. These currents are also called convection currents, and they often occur over sandy beaches and freshly plowed fields, in desert areas and in other places where the air is unstable. In the past, rising or falling air currents have often been called air pockets or bumps, but these terms are misnomers. The correct terms are updrafts and downdrafts. The ability of rising air currents to lift an airplane is utilized by glider pilots, who are often able to keep a glider in the air for many hours merely by keeping the glider in the rising current. Now I am giving you a figure which will illustrate how a vertical current can lift an airplane. Now next topic, relative motion. Motion is movement. If an object changes its position, it is in motion. Any object can be located by its distance from adjacent objects. Hence, an object that has moved has changed its position with respect to some other object that has a fixed position, and relative motion has taken place. To fix this position of the object, it is necessary that three axes be established. On the surface of the earth, one axis could be a straight line running from east to west. The sectional axis could be a line running from north to south, and crossing the first axis and the third axis could be a vertical straight line extending upward from the intersection of the first two axes. This is illustrated in this figure. By using three axes, we can accurately locate the point P with respect to the intersection of three axes at O. If we use the meter as a unit of measurement in the illustration, we see that the point P is 3 meter east of the north-south axis, 2 meter north of the east-west axis, and 4 meter above the plane of the of the north-south and east-west axis. If the point P should move, one or more of the values would change. Now I am giving you a figure which is a relative motion exists between the wind and all objects fixed to the earth. The windsock is fixed with respect to the earth, and relative motion exists between the wind and the windsock. In this case, the reference is the earth. A person riding in an airplane may be sitting still even though the airplane is traveling at 500 km. In this case, there is no relative motion between the person and the airplane, but there is relative motion between the airplane and the air. When the air is calm, a free balloon will maintain a fixed position over its point of departure from the ground. If the wind begins to blow, the balloon will be carried away from the point of departure at the same speed as that of the wind. Hence, there will be no relative motion between the wind and the balloon. In bracket, assuming that the balloon maintains a constant altitude. Bracket close. But there will be relative motion between the balloon and the earth. An airplane must have relative motion between itself and the air in order to fly. The velocity of this motion is called the true airspeed, in bracket TAS, and is measured in knots. 1 knot is a speed of 1 nautical miles per hour. 1 nautical mile is approximately 6076.115 feet, that is 1852 meter. If an airplane is flying at a speed of 75 km and there is no wind, the ground speed of the airplane will be 75 knots. That is, the relative motion between the airplane and the ground will have a velocity of 75 knot. If the airplane is flying at 75 knot and is heading directly into a 75 knot wind, the airplane will remain stationary with respect to the ground. If an airplane is flying at 75 knot airspeed against a 25 knot wind, it will have a speed of 75 knot with respect to the air and a speed of 50 knot with respect to the ground. Thus we see the velocity in relative, because all motion is relative and velocity is the time rate of motion. True air speed, represented by the symbol V. Below that, small t is the velocity of the airplane along its flight path with respect to the body of air through which the airplane is moving. Now, we have read about the application of Bernoulli's principle, but here we will go further for this. Now, application of Bernoulli's principle. For this, I am giving you a figure. This figure shows an atomizer such as might be used in the home for spraying a liquid. When the rubber bulb is squeezed, air is forced through a horizontal tube that is wide where it joins the bulb, narrow in the middle, and wide again where it approaches the nozzle. The narrow middle portion is called the throat and is also called a venturi because of its shape. A venturi tube, called the vertical riser, extends from the lower portion of the throat into the liquid. The motion of air passing through the throat is accompanied by the reduction of pressure, so that the pressure on the liquid in the riser becomes less than the atmospheric pressure on the surface of the liquid. The difference in pressure forces the liquid to ascend in the riser to join with the stream of air and be expelled through the nozzle. Now I am giving you another figure to show a ball balanced in a stream of air rising from a vertical tube at a comparatively high velocity. This simple phenomena has been used many times in store windows to attract attention by its apparently mysterious action. Actually, the principle is easily explained. The velocity of the air coming from the jet is greater than that of the surrounding air, but its pressure is less. When the ball starts to move horizontally out of the airstream, the atmospheric pressure, which is greater, forces it back into the balanced position. A simple experiment can be performed with a small strip of lightweight paper. Hold one end by the thumb and forefinger just below the lower lip and blow. The paper will rise when you begin to blow and will fall when you stop blowing. The velocity of the air above the paper creates a region of reduced pressure that is less than the atmospheric pressure acting on the lower surface. The difference of pressure between the upper and lower surfaces causes lift. Another experiment to demonstrate this principle. For this, again a figure. When two sheets of paper are held by the edges of in such a manner that there is a space between them as shown, and a stream of air is blown through the space, the two sheets will immediately come together. The atmospheric pressure above the top sheet and below the lower sheet is greater than the air pressure between the sheets. The difference of pressure then forces the sheets together. An interesting demonstration of the same principle is shown in this figure. The equipment consists of an ordinary sewing thread spool, a small piece of cardboard, and a pin. The pin is inserted through the center of the cardboard and into the hole in the spool. This is to prevent the cardboard from slipping down away from the spool. Now if you hold the card so that it is snugly against the end of the spool and blow through the spool, you can let go of the card and it will cling to the end of the spool. When you stop blowing, the card will fall away. The reason for this phenomena is that the velocity of the air escaping between the card and the spool is high and its pressure is therefore low. The atmospheric pressure on the other side of the card is greater than the pressure of the air escaping between the card and the spool. And the card is held against the end of the spool by the atmospheric pressure. The experiment described in the foregoing paragraph are all based upon Bernoulli's principle, discovered by Daniel Bernoulli, a Swiss scientist of the 18th century, in bracket 1700 to 1782. This principle states that as that a velocity increases, the pressure decreases, and as the velocity decreases, the pressure increases. Actually, technical language, Bernoulli's principle states that if total energy of a particle in motion is constant at a point on its path in a steady flow. From this form statement is derived the simple principle given above. However, it is sufficient for the pilot or the technician to remember merely the fact that pressure decreases, velocity increases, and vice versa, in order to grasp it fundamental of aerodynamics. Now, pressure and force differential. The difference between pressure and force must be kept in mind when the respective effects are considered. A pressure of 5 psi, that is in bracket 34.5 kilopascal, acting on an area of 20 psi, that is in bracket 20 pounds, that is 129 per centimeter square, will exert more force than a pressure of 10 psi, 69 kilopascal, acting on an area of 5 inches square, 32.3 centimeter square in bracket. This is illustrated in figure which I am giving you. In this case, the 5 psi pressure is move the pistons against the 10 psi pressure, because if 5 psi produces a force of 100 pounds, that is in bracket 445 Newton, and the 10 psi produces a force of only 50 pounds, that is 222.5 Newton, the direction in which the pressure is acting is also important. The pressure of a gas always exerts a force perpendicular to the surface upon which it is acting. Now figure shows a hemisphere in bracket 1/2 sphere. Obvious, the spherical side has more area than the flat side. Would appear from the fact that the force acting on the spherical side would be greater than the force acting on the flat side. When the pressure is equal to all sides, it is true that the total force acting on the spherical side is greater than the force acting on the flat side. However, the direction of the forces acting on the spherical side vary as much as 180 degrees. The resultant total force indicated by the arrow A is exactly equal to the total force acting on the flat side as indicated by arrow B. The movements of an airplane wing through the air creates both differential or pressure and differential of force between the top and the bottom of the wing. The air flowing over the curved top surface increases in velocity with respect to the air flowing across the flat bottom of the wing, because of the air over the loop has a greater distance to travel. This results in a lowering of pressure on the top of the wing, hence lift is developed. This is illustrated in this figure. Important is to know the Venturi tube. The operation of a Venturi tube provides a good illustration of Bernoulli's principle. The upper drawing, which I am giving you a figure, shows a Venturi tube or meter used originally for the measurement of the flow of water in pipes. The device consists of a conical nozzle-like reducer through which air or water can enter, a narrow section called the throat, and a conical enlargement of the outlet that attains the same size as the inlet but more gradually. The quantity of air drawn through the inlet will be discharged through the same sized opening at the outlet. The velocity of the air must therefore increase as it passes through the inlet cone, must attain a maximum value in the throat, and thereafter gradually slows down to its initial value at the outlet. The pressure in the throat is consequently less than at the entrance. Now the lower drawing of this shows a Venturi tube with manometers, which are gauges for measuring pressure. Bernoulli's principle states that the total energy of a particle in motion is constant at all points on its path in a steady flow. The pressure in the throat of the Venturi tube is less than the pressure in any part because of the increased velocity. This is explained by the fact that the same amount of air passes all points in the tube in a given time. That is, the air must come out of one end of the tube as fast as it enters the other end. Since the throat is smaller, the air must travel faster through the throat for the same amount of air to pass through the throat as passes through the inlet and outlet. The total energy remains constant in any system. In the Venturi tube, the energy of motion has increased in the throat. Hence, it is necessary for the energy of pressure to decrease. The reduction of pressure in the throat as compared with the pressure in the inlet is shown by the height of the mercury or other liquid in the manometers. Now, figure which I am giving you will show a method for measuring air pressure on various parts of the wing. Such measurements can be taken in flight or on the ground. Test made a number of years ago showed that for a typical wing of the period having a flat lower surface, when this lower surface was parallel to the direction of motion of the wing through the air, the lift was due to reduced pressure on the upper surface of the wing. When the leading edge of the wing was raised so that the lower surface made an angle to the direction of motion, part of the lifting force came from the increased pressure on the lower surface of the wing. Most of the lift, however, still came from the lower pressure on the upper surface of the wing. Reaction of air on a flat plate. Now understand this topic. The effect produced a flat plate moving through the air is illustrated in this figure. The air strikes the leading edge of the flat plate, the passage of the air is obstructed and its velocity is reduced. Some of the velocity of air flow over the upper surface and some flow under the lower surface, but all particles of air must reach the trailing edge of the plate at the same time. Those particles that passes over the upper surface have further to go and therefore must move faster than those passing under the lower edge. In accordance with Bernoulli's principle, the increased velocity above the plate results in a lower pressure than that existing below the plate. Since there is a difference of pressure, the greater must prevail and there is an upward force exerted on the plate. This force is called lift. If the region of very low pressure immediately above the plate is too large, the particles of air do not flow smoothly downward to the rear, but they drop into the region and behave widely, causing turbulence and eddy currents. The loss of velocity causes an increase of pressure above the plate and a loss of lift. If the turbulence is not too great, there is still enough difference between the pressure above and below the plate to sustain lift. The angle between the plate and the stream, which is shown in the figure which I have given earlier, is the angle of attack. Informal definition is rather technical and will be explained later in this letter. I will be explaining later. When the angle of attack changes, the lift and resistance to the forward movement of the plate called drag change. If the flat plate is placed in the airstream in such a position that it does not materially change the direction of the streamlines, there is no lift because there is no difference between the velocity of the air flowing over the upper surface and that flowing under the lower surface. Under these conditions, there is no difference in pressure between the upper and the lower surface of the plate. As we have already observed, however, when the plate is inclined at a small angle of attack, lift and drag become important. As we increase the angle of attack, the air stream must change direction more and there is more differential and more lift through a range of several degrees. The dynamic development of lift can be understood by considering Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. When there is an angle between the flat plate and the direction of the airstream, the air forced to change direction. If the flat plate is tilted upward against the airstream, the air flowing under the plate is forced downward. The plate therefore applies a downward force to the air, and the air applies an equal and opposite upward force so that flat plate, this is a lift. The same principle applies to a water skier. When the skis are moving along the surface of the water, they are applying a downward force to the water and causing some of the water to change position. The water applies a force to these skis sufficient to support the weight of the skier. The angle through which an airstream is deflected by any lifting surface is called downwash angle. It is especially important when control surfaces are studied because they are normally placed to the rear of the wings, where they are influenced by the downward deflected airstream known as the downwash. Drag does not behave like lift. Lift increases as the angle of attack increases, and the increase in lift is roughly proportional to the increase of the angle of attack. Drag also increases as the angle of attack increases, but it increases much more rapidly than lift. Therefore, when the angle of attack reaches a certain magnitude, the drag may be greater than the lift. Now, very important, again, this topic, center of pressure. The center of pressure, in bracket we write Cp, its abbreviation, as shown in the figure which I had given earlier. The Cp is the point at which the chord of an airfoil section intersects the line of action of the resultant aerodynamic force and about which the pressure balance. The Cp of an airfoil must not be confused with the aerodynamic center. The aerodynamic center is defined as a point in a cross section of an airfoil or other aerodynamic body or combination of bodies about which the pitching moment remains practically constant with nearly all changes in angle of attack. The CP moves with the angle of attack changes. In the same figure which I had given, the arrow pointing vertically upward from the CP represents the lift, because the force of lift tends to raise the flat plate. The arrow pointing horizontally to the rear at the top of the diagram represent drag, because that force tends to resist any forward movement of the flat plate. If the flat plate were a kite, we would say that the drag is the force which represents the tendency of the wind to blow the kite to the rear. However, a kite is held by a string which counteracts the tendency of the wind to blow the kite to the rear and permits the force to lift to raise the kite. If the string breaks, the kite is no longer maintained at the proper angle and it is carried away by the air stream. Since lift has disappeared, the kite eventually falls to the ground. If there is no wind, a kite can be raised by holding the string and running. This creates an artificial wind, or in technical terms, there is relative motion between the kite and the air. We have already learned that if the string breaks, whether we run with the kite in still air or stand motionless and hold the string while the wind opposes the kite, the kite will fall. In the case of the flat plate, the same fact holds true. There must be relative motion between the plate and the air to cause a pressure differential and create lift. Now, lift and drag components. What are the components of lift and drag? The effect of lift and drag can be determined by implying force vector as shown in this figure. Lift vector is represented by the line AB and the drag vector by the line AD. Then the resultant of the two forces is AC. As previously explained, lift is always vertical and drag is always horizontal. When the airplane is flying straight and level, the length of the arrows AB, AC and AD are in proportion to the magnitudes of the force they represent. For example, if lift is 4 times as great as drag, the arrow representing lift must be drawn 4 times as long as the arrow representing drag. The resultant of the lift and drag shows the direction and magnitude of the force created by the difference in pressure between the top surface and the bottom surface of a flat surface. Lift and drag vectors applied to a flat plate are shown in this figure. If the plate represents a kite, then the kite string will take a direction the same as the resultant of lift and drag, except for a small difference caused by gravity. If the direction and magnitude (length) of the resultant are both known but the magnitude of the lift and drag are not known, they can be found. Simply draw a horizontal line to the left from the arrowhead on the resultant and draw a vertical line upward from the CP. The two lines will intersect and establish the point from which the magnitude of the lift drag can be determined. These lift and drag arrows in vectors are called components because the forces that they represent are components, parts of the force represented by the resultant. Now lift by drag ratio. The angle of attack in the figure which I have given earlier before this topic, hence both the lift and the drag are greater, but the drag has increased in proportion more than the lift. The ratio of lift to drag at any angle of attack is a measure of the effectiveness, because lift is a beneficial force and drag is detrimental force. Our drag must be accepted as a necessary able to produce lift. The drag developed to produce lift is called induced drag. The drag caused by the friction between the air and aircraft moving through the air is called parasite drag. Parasite drag does not contribute to lift. The ratio of lift to the drag is called lift by drag ratio and is commonly referred to as L/D. L is also capital, D is also capital. However, when any L/D ratio is given, the corresponding angle of attack should also be given because the L/D ratio has no meaning by itself. The L/D ratio is a fraction with the lift for the numerator and the drag for the denominator. It is perfectly simple principle of mathematics that if the numerator remains the same and the denominator increases, the values of the fraction decreases. For example, 1/2 is obviously greater than 1/4. Likewise, if the denominator is small and the numerator large, the value of a fraction is greater. If the lift by drag, that is L/D ratio, is 21:1 at a certain angle of attack, the value of the fraction and hence the effectiveness are greater than when the L/D ratio is 14:1. Now skin friction. Skin friction is illustrated in this figure. Thin flat plate held edgewise to an airstream. The particles of the air separate at the leading edge and flow smoothly over the upper surface and under the lower surface, reuniting behind the trailing edge. The resistance of skin friction is caused by the tendency of the particles of air to cling to the surface of the plate. There are two reasons why the air clings to the surface of the plate. First, the plate has a certain amount of roughness, relatively speaking, regardless of how much we attempt to smooth a surface. It is impossible to make it perfectly smooth. This can be proved quickly by observing a polished surface through a high-powered microscope. To eliminate skin friction altogether, it would be necessary to have all the molecules of the material in perfect alignment of the surface of the material. The second reason why air tends to cling on to the surface of the plate because of the viscosity of the air. Even though it is not always apparent, air does have thickness like oil or syrup. Technically, viscosity is a resistance offered by a fluid, or in bracket gas or liquid, to the relative motion of its particles. But in the common use of the term, it means the adhesive or sticky characteristic of a fluid. Now, streamline and turbulent flow. What is a streamline and what is turbulent flow of an air or of a we are dealing with the air, so we will go for air. The streamline flow may be defined as a smooth non-turbulent flow. Turbulent flow is defined as a flow characterized by turbulence, that is a flow in which the velocity varies erratically in both magnitude and direction with time. Now there is a figure which illustrates the turbulence that is created when a flat plate is held perpendicular, that is in brackets normal, to the direction of an airstream. The air striking the plate must change its velocity and direction to pass around the plate. The abrupt change in direction of the airflow around the edges of the plate creates the turbulence that can be seen on the side of the plate opposite to the side from which the air is approaching. It must be understood that a streamline flow may occur with certain shapes other than that of a thin flat plate held edgewise to an airstream. A typical streamline form, for example, may be shaped like a teardrop. Later in this text, we shall discuss the flow of air around sections of various shapes. Now, when the flat plate is at low angle of attack as the lower part as given in this figure. There is a slight increase of pressure over the upper surface caused by turbulence with the resulting loss of lift, but when the flat plate is at higher angle of attack as in the upper part of this figure, the turbulence is greater and the reduction of lift is more pronounced. The study of flat plate in an airstream make it easy to understand the elementary principles of lift and drag. But the wing of an airplane is not a flat plate. Instead, it is a curved plate, somewhat resembling the wing of a bird. Hence, the next step is to observe the performance of curved plates in airstreams. Now, I am giving you a figure to understand. In this figure, it shows the airflow about a curved plate at a low angle of attack. The particles of air that reach the upper surface flow smoothly to the rear, but the particles that strike the lower surface must abruptly change direction to follow the shape of the plate. This sudden change of the direction causes a turbulent region behind the leading edge of the leading edge and increases the drag at a low angle of attack where the drag should be low. Now in this figure, the airflow about a curved plate at a slightly higher angle of attack. I am going to give you one more figure. This figure shows the airflow about a curved plate at a slightly higher angle of attack. The airstream flow much more smoothly to the rear than they do when the curved plate is at low angle of attack or when a flat plate is at high angle of attack. It is apparent that the curved plate is better than a flat plate for high angle of attack but inferior to a flat plate at low angles of attack. Furthermore, a simple curved plate lacks the thickness necessary to contain the wing structure. The problem of drag caused by turbulence behind the leading edge of a curved plate at a low angle of attack and the problem of housing the wing structure can be solved by using a form like as shown in this figure which I am giving you, which illustrates the silhouette of an airfoil called an airfoil section. Now, laminar flow. The word laminar is derived from the Latin word lamina, meaning a thin plate of metal or other material. Laminar flow implies the concept that air is flowing in thin sheets of layers close to the surface of wing with no disturbance between the layers of air. That is, there is no cross flow of air particles from one layer of air to another. Also, there is no sideways movement of air particles with respect to the direction of airflow. Laminar flow is most likely to occur when the surface is extremely smooth and especially near the leading edge of an aircraft. Under these conditions, the boundary layer will be very thin. The boundary layer is that layer of the adjacent to the airfoil surface. The air velocity in the layer varies from 0 on the surface of the airfoil to the velocity of the airstream at the outer edge of the boundary layer. The cause of the boundary layer is the friction between the surface of the wing and the air. Ordinarily, the airflow at the leading edge of the smooth surface will be laminar. But as the air moves towards the trailing edge of the wing, the boundary layer becomes thicker and laminar flow diminishes. This is illustrated in this figure. Now, many experiments have been carried out in an effort to control the boundary layer and increase this laminar flow. One of the methods used for boundary layer control is illustrated in this figure. All holes are placed in the upper surface of the wing, and the boundary layer air is drawn through these holes by means of a high volume low pressure air pump and ejected through holes under the trailing edge of the wing. The effect is to keep the boundary layer thin and permit laminar flow to continue. Now, low drag boundary layer control. Another method used to overcome the effects of turbulence in the boundary layer has been developed by the Northrop Corporation and is called low drag boundary layer control. Wind tunnel tests were used to study the nature of boundary layer turbulence, and the result of these tests are shown in this figure. This illustration shows smooth flow near the leading edge of the wing and turbulence developed as the air flows to the rear. A mixture of lump black and kerosene is used to make the turbulence visible. The principle of low drag boundary layer control involves maintaining the speed of the boundary layer by sucking part of it through thin slots extending along the wing surface from the fuselage to the wingtip. A diagram illustrating this principle is shown in this figure. When the turbulent air is drawn through the slots in the wing, a smooth flow can continue to the trailing edge of the wing. The air drawn into the wing may be discharged at the trailing edge of the wing, or it may be ducted into the fuselage and discharged through the tail of the fuselage. A cutaway cross section of a wing designed for low drag boundary layer control is shown in this figure. The upper surface of the wing is made with 2 sheets of aluminium alloy separated by one section to produce plenum chambers extending along the wing from the fuselage to the wing tip. In the top surface, small slots extending the full length of the wing are cut. Small holes are drilled from the slots into the plenum chambers to permit the air to enter the chambers. The construction of the slotted wing surface is accomplished by using 2 sheets of aluminum alloy. The thicker of the 2 sheets is approximately 3 by 32 inches thick, and into the sheet are cut rectangular grooves about 3 by 16 inches wide and 0.030 inch deep. In the bottom of these grooves, holes are drilled as shown in the figure. After this preparation, a very thin sheet of aluminum alloy is bonded to the top of the thick sheet. Following this, slots about 0.004 inch wide are cut into the top skin along the grooves in the thick sheet. This construction provides continuous slots along the surface and still retains a large percentage of the strength of the wing skin. One of the essential features of this construction described above is a mirror smooth surface. This is important because ripples or other surface irregularities would greatly reduce the effectiveness of the slots. The effect of low drag boundary layer control is to reduce the friction drag of the wing by as much as 80%. This of course will greatly reduce fuel consumption for a given flight distance, thus increasing the range proportionality. The airplane will therefore fly farther, carry larger payloads and operate at a reduced ton per mile